You're listening to Writer Unblocked, the podcast for serious authors who are ready to scale their careers with smart strategy. I'm Nicole, your host, and I help authors navigate publishing, marketing, and multi-format expansion, all while keeping the vibe high. Today on Writer Unblocked, I'm joined by creative and media consultant Rebecca Fenton. We talk about what it means to develop original content across publishing, audio, and TV, and how authors can start thinking of their work as part of a larger content slate. Plus, we dive into creative feedback and her new children's book celebrating joyful single parenthood. Let's get into it. Rebecca, I'm so glad you're here on Writer Unblocked.
I'm very pleased to be here too. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to talk about your varied background. And to that end, my first question is that because you've worked across audio, TV, publishing, and now a children's book, which we're going to get into in a bit, what does the creative process look like when you're switching mediums? Like, how do you decide this goes here and this goes here and this serves more as this type of medium?
It's a very good question. And it was the question that I was thinking about the most in terms of, is there a one size fits all, which I have my feelings on, or is there not? And particularly between, say, fiction, nonfiction, audio, TV, I actually feel like I'm in quite a privileged position. And some of the reason then that I've now become a self-employed media consultant, that I have worked across all of those, as you say. So what I do find is there's actually quite a lot of commonalities, between, if you're editing a podcast, if you're structurally editing or script editing a TV show, an audio drama, there's a lot of similarities if you're working within like the same genre, the same style, the same medium. And the same goes, so something that I kind of specialize in, and I know that you've had a lot of experience in too, is like mapping out a whole content program for a company. So one of the services that I offer is almost like a kind of development slate in a box type of thing. And, to talk about, operational elements of like, what do you have to check with legal? What elements do we need for this? How do we then get that up and running? Things like metadata, etc. That I'm smiling because I know that you and I have often had correspondence in our past company about. So again, there's a lot of commonality there. So I feel like it can be kind of transferred between, for example, running a TV development slate or a audio drama or podcast development slate. You mentioned the children's book. I came in to help out a company who were looking to develop from scratch original illustrated children's book list. So they were licensing a lot of content. They're a not-for-profit, and they were, with due respect, they were asking for kind of very reasonable terms. And therefore, the quality of the content they were getting was not necessarily front list. It was fine. It was great for their, improving literacy for their readers around the world. But they were really looking to get kind of top quality, original, owned IP. And to not go on too long about it, I was a bit intimidated by that because I had never really worked either in book publishing proper or print publishing, but particularly within like illustrated children's books or literacy. But what I did find is that it was like really very similar in terms of process, in terms of editing, but you have to download from, the client that's hiring you or the author that's working with you. Like what are the intentions? What are we setting out to achieve? So as long as you, as say the consultant or the editor or the, kind of media programmer in the mix, actually listen to that, then you can find that a lot of the kind of due process is the same.
That's reassuring because
yes,
it always seems.
I feel like I gave you a long answer, but
no, but it's a good answer because it's the other thing that I thought of while I was listening to you speak when you said the word slate is something that I have been trying to say to authors, and not quite in those terms, but you put it beautifully. I mean, when you're an author now, you are expected to put out a lot of content.
Mm.
And to your point, you and I have experience developing a slate and managing a slate and organizing a slate. And so that's a great way to articulate that. Like an author may not either may not have the skill or the time. And so that's where either a book coach or a media consultant would come in with, which is like, how do you create a slate? How do you program and plan content for the long, uh, like the long haul?
Yeah, you're right. And it might feed into other points that we talk about, but I think a real interesting thing where you're working directly with authors or you're working with companies, clients who are not entirely sure like how all of those pieces fit together. When you are experienced in kind of the weighting and variety of a certain kind of content program and how all of that works, that is quite a valuable service that you can offer as a consultant, is to talk to them about, basically how publishing works and how like the mix of a slate or a program will work. So you might have your kind of what we would call marquee or lead titles, but that might just be like one of 50 or one of 500 or one of five. You don't, it's quite inscrutable, I think, for individual authors and from, say, for example, a book publisher looking to kind of license and develop for TV, particularly if they're an independent or a kind of, a one person band. Like they don't have that visibility on how it all works. And I think perhaps you and I maybe take that for granted.
Right.
And I just kind of assume that everybody knows that. But then coming into this consultancy, it's like one of the most valuable services that we can offer, really, is just giving some kind of transparency and context around that.
Yeah. I almost see it as like we see around the corner, right?
Yes, I put that in my note. And I put that in my note. It literally said, can think around the corners. So great minds again.
Because, and again, it could be a lack of experience or skill, but also even if you are skilled, if you are an author who's trying to write a book, that's what you should be trying to think about. And so it's advantageous to have yourself surrounded with people that can help you. That's what I advocate for. Like, no creative is supposed to be doing all this alone.
Agreed. But I feel like a lot of kind of self-publishing routes and various ways to market nowadays, which are really exciting and great, and things that I've kind of, utilized myself as an author. I think a lot of the messaging around that is that you should be marketeer, you should be PR person, and a lot of writers that I know are naturally, not always, but naturally a bit more introverted. They're very absorbed in their worlds, therefore their worlds are very engaging, convincing, creative, but they're not natural marketeers. I'm not even 100% sure that I am one. I call myself like a functioning introvert, in disguise perhaps. I just outed myself, but I think, when people ask kind of agents, editors, consultants, where do they come in? Are they necessary? Perhaps for some all-rounder writers, maybe not, but I think on the whole, writers like to write because it's a solitary engagement.
Yes, exactly. And then these poor authors are out here having to learn how to do social media and marketing and Amazon ads and everything, and editing and formatting and self-publishing and looking at contracts, and it's just and then audio, right? Then I've been trying to get some of my clients into audio, and can feel very daunting to them in the beginning to even understand subsidiary rights. I'm finding that there's a lot of lack of understanding of those things, and just signing them away in a contract.
There's mixed messaging out there as well, I think, whether, again, it's great in a lot of ways that there's a lot of kind of forums, discussion, resources for authors of all kind, including self-published. But I do think that there's a lot of conflicting advice out there. And there are kind of quite, it's probably not the right word, but kind of evangelical camps in terms of like, yes, you must do everything yourself. And, all of these people in the background are redundant and are not useful and they just take their cut and they don't do anything. And perhaps, particularly you and I coming from the backgrounds that we do, we don't necessarily share that view. But I feel like the poor author stuck in the middle that really just wants to share their creative child with the world. They shouldn't have to really care about all of that. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully that's where professionals like you and I will come in.
I agree. I agree. And I was curious in terms of developing original content, which you've done for companies like Audible and Line Pictures. What's what's something that you could share with us about what it takes to create something or like quote unquote original in a saturated market? Like how do we approach original content at this point?
I feel like it's a little bit of a paradox, or I mean, I do quite believe in that quote, and this is actually, I guess, going to move to the positive rather than sounding negative. But I don't necessarily believe that there are any truly original ideas. Anyone can like come at me on that one, but like original content, so original IP that an individual or a company would develop, compelling, then I would tend to always come back to the writing has to be good. I believe. I'm naming no names. When I was working in television, I actually spoke to unnamed major companies who could have been quoted as saying the quality of the content doesn't matter, the headline does. I guess as a creative at heart, I don't agree with that. I think that a truly well written and or executed, imagined creative idea will tend to always find success, even if that's not, as we've seen in the past, even if that's not within the artists, the writers, the creator's lifetime.
Right.
Like good content does rise to the top. And perhaps that's quite a hopeful statement and a bit kind of up in the air, but like passion, to some extent, an element of life experience or a great passion for the subject, kind of connection to it, makes a difference. But I do think in today's world, what I feel is termed as an original is more of a term that means that that particular company has commissioned it.
Right.
It can be really, really well executed. There's like numerous examples, even from like the last few years. Like I've just finished the most recent season of Black Mirror, like these concepts that then kind of become true in real life. And, but yeah, I feel like I'm being a bit down on the term, but I'm not actually sure that.
No, but I agree with you. I agree with you on what you just said, that it's come to sort of mean a company commissioned it. Like when I hear Netflix original, I'm like, all right, okay, it's only available on Netflix.
Yes, exactly.
Right. And
And
I hadn't thought about it that way before out loud, but when you just said it, I was like, oh, that's exactly how it is. Like it's a Hulu original. It's an HBO original, It's as opposed to thinking, oh, it's an original as it's an original creative idea, because at the risk of someone also coming at me, I also think no idea is truly original. I think that if you really trace the author's background far enough, or their tastes, or what they've read in the past, or what something triggered the idea for the content to be written or created or filmed. And so, I mean, I'm a big fan of like fairy tale retellings, or I'm actually a bigger fan of those things where I'm like, I think I know what the story is, but then someone is taking a quote unquote original approach to it, or a retelling, or an adaptation, so to speak, right? So I almost feel like if you trace it back far enough in somebody's brain everything is an adaptation of something that we've all had in our percolating in our mind.
And I mean, I think really perhaps what we're both trying to say, like, I don't think that's a bad thing. And
Right.
I think the reason as well that I wanted to make the point and that you're making as well about nothing being kind of truly original is I do think some writers, some creatives that I've worked with, they kind of tie themselves in knots of, is this line, is this paragraph, is this chapter, is this concept derivative? Whereas I think everything is, but the difference that brings something from kind of normal, fine, consumable, readable, day to day that elevates it to exceptional. Unfortunately, that is a little bit of the secret sauce. And when you develop a slate, you don't know what's going to rise to the top. And that's the point of it. That's the point of having that, varied mixture in whatever you're developing. And that was the excitement for me of and still of when I'm developing kind of varied content slates, because the little piece that you do for perhaps the less money with the new writer that everybody ignores for about, in TV it could even be they ignore it for 10 years, but in audio, as we know, things move a bit faster. But that could be the one, I don't know, thinking of like Netflix and Baby Reindeer or something. Pretty sure that that was developed, as a passion project because the source material was great and really interesting. But if we were to ask, did the top execs at Netflix think that particular program would kind of take over the world for a few months or weeks? We'd both probably say no, right? And so,
No, and you and I have been in enough rooms trying to put projects forth that nobody would think like, yeah, that's a good idea. And you know what? The Baby Reindeer is a good example, but the other example that I always have said, my gosh, that was so good. And I know for a fact, had I brought something like that to the table, my superiors would have said no. It was I forget the exact title of this podcast, but it was like, Where's Bill Simmons or Missing Bill Simmons or
rings
something.
a bell. Yeah.
It was so good, about Bill Simmons, like nobody could find him. And he was just such a forgotten figure in pop culture. And I could see someone pitching that and executives being like, nobody cares about Bill Simmons. Like nobody
Mm.
cares. We would never spend money making this. And that brings me to this notion of, or this statement of, all of this is subjective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And kind of time dependent, trend dependent. I mean, I feel again like almost the conversation that we're having right now, it could be intimidating to a writer of any status because there are so many variables that, that are quite hard to
Yeah.
predict and control.
It's
You can be
it's
great
almost
at
like
a
it
huge
could be
success.
comforting. It could be comforting to be like, "Oh, well, taste is subjective, so if someone doesn't like my book or my writing or my project, that doesn't really say anything about my project. It's just somebody's taste." But at the same time, it is a scary thought. Like everything is subjective, and you could never truly know, is my work quote unquote good?
And that is the question, particularly with the clients where I work on structural editing and their kind of various stages of their writing and, training in writing and what have you. That's the question that they want reassurance on the most. And from my perspective, I don't work with completely entry level writers at this point. So, like the fact that I'm working with them, and again, no disrespect to those writers, but I don't think I'm the right editor for them in terms of my skills and experience.
Right.
So, yes, with them, I kind of say, well, I probably wouldn't be working with you if you weren't at a certain skill set and standard. But it is, writers again are kind of naturally insecure because, like, when I keep using the birthing analogy, but like when you're creating something that is a creative production and what have you, you don't know how it's going to land in the world. So it is quite a scary place. Whereas I think again, you and I have had experience of just like 9 out of 10 ideas being shot down. So I would say I'm probably incredibly thick skinned now. So there are like some of the few creatives that can probably take a lot of feedback, but It has to be quite carefully managed, and to not knock someone's confidence
Exactly.
unduly. you
Yeah.
know
Well, now that we have the caveat of good and great is subjective, the question I have is what, in your experience and or in the projects you worked on, what tends to elevate a project from good to great? Like, what are the things that you've seen take something from good to great?
I do think that the ability to take feedback and constructive criticism, I really have never met a writer or a creative producer of any level that doesn't need constructive feedback on the first draft. And that's not to say that I am the oracle of everything, but like to actually get that experience from both, rounded feedback from both experienced people in the field, but also from like friends and family are the absolute most brutal. I don't know if you found that, if you kind of put a creative work out there or talk about a business idea, like they're supportive, loving, and wonderful. But like if I, put my children's book to my dad or whatever, the most like brutal, cutting feedback comes from there. And it's not from a place of, wanting to destroy my confidence, but I think you get that rounded view from experienced and not as experienced readers in the field, that if you can take all of that on board and then find the skill set in yourself to like have the courage of conviction to take and leave what you think is appropriate, so things that kind of confirm doubts that you already had, something you're not clear about and everyone else says this isn't clear, to be able to really take that on board without putting that wall up straight away. I've seen it even in professional situations with creative people. It can actually bomb a project. And
Oh,
you as the creative producer don't necessarily want to work on it,
a
and
hundred
it's a
percent, a
shame.
100%. I've been involved in projects where I've given feedback, like this scene is confusing, or I don't understand why this character is doing this. And the writer will say, well, of course it makes perfect sense because blah, 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 blah. And I said, yeah, because that's all in your head. Like this is valuable feedback for you. If me as a basically beta reader of your work is
Mhm.
telling you I am confused, if one person is confused, you have to fix something.
Well, that's it. If one person is confused, I mean, particularly if that person, is experienced in reviewing creative work, but regardless, if one person's confused, it's confusing. That's as
Yeah.
simple as that, isn't it?
If one
So,
person is confused, it's confusing. Thank you, Rebecca.
just straightening that out. But I think a lot of people kind of miss that memo. And there is
Yeah.
just, it's such a vulnerable place to be that you just, yeah, like I don't even know actually myself if I could necessarily continue working with individuals that were reticent to feedback or combative about it. There's a collaborative way of working.
Yeah.
And I have recently been working with a film producer on a project, and they have pushed back on certain elements where I've maybe gone a bit rogue or, kind of put my own opinion on it. And they've said, actually, no, we really strongly feel that this is the route we should take because, like, with respect, we know our art. But yes, that bit of give and take, particularly working with, another producer or an editor, that unfortunately not a lot of people are good at doing that. So,
No, you have to I always tell my potential clients, you have to be coachable,
mm,
right? You have to, otherwise, why are you even talking? You have to be open. That's the point, the collaboration and working with someone that has experience in that media landscape to be able to guide you. And I always remind people, you don't have to accept or change everything. You're the boss. It's your work.
mm,
And so if an editor gives you potential changes, if a developmental editor tells you your story should be structured a different way, if I tell you I don't like this character, you can sit with that, but you don't have to take all these changes. Like you're still ultimately the writer, author, creator. and you can decide. But it's that openness that you were saying earlier. Like, you have to have an openness to hear what another person is saying about your work in progress, because then once it's out there, then you have to contend with reviews.
It's not all about, again, there's kind of that however many, probably smallish percent of people that are just fabulous in every way, and they don't need anything, and they just get on with everything, and everything is brilliant, and I envy them. But yeah, I think that going back to your original question, that kind of ability to draft, redraft, not be too wedded and committed to kind of a tunnel vision of a certain, I've literally worked with works in any different format that have started as like a romantic comedy and ended as a kind of horror thriller. And like, I'm not even joking when I say that. And it has become different and often better for it. And, those are the programs or the books or the, audio dramas that get made at the end of the day. You have, depends who and what you're writing for, but if you want commercial success, you do actually have to write to brief as well. And that's the truth.
And that's the thing about commercial success. Some of this stuff, like Baby Reindeer and things like that, like just outliers, just things that kind of pick up and they're not that obvious. But I find that some things that are fit in that box of commercial success is because some of these things tend to be very formulaic, and that's not a bad thing. Particularly, for example, in the romance genre, where number one, people read or listen or consume, rom-coms, TV, audiobooks, print very fast. So it's an area where you have to produce quicker. And because it's such a large, voracious community, I find that they love their tropes, which is very helpful for writers because then they can really just pick the one they're good at or the one that they like the most, and it's very formulaic. It's very formulaic. And again, I say that as a positive because as a reader, and I am also a reader and consumer romance, I want the look-alike. When I finish my Enemies to Lovers, I want basically the same book with maybe like a slightly different plot. Like, I just want to keep experiencing the thing that makes me happy.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I hear commercial success, I think, yes, there's the outlier commercial success. And then there's the formulaic, like a media consultant would tell you, like, no, these are all the things you need to hit. Right? This is what I would change if I were you, because you're going to hit this, 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 and this. Is almost like a checklist. And nothing's guaranteed. Right? Nothing's guaranteed. But that's why algorithms will serve you and say, oh, because you read this, you will like this. And 9 times out of 10, it's right, because it's hitting a checklist, and being formulaic in those cases is a very good thing.
Agreed. And I think, it's right in a lot of genres. And as you say, kind of tropes and styles, particularly where it's an ongoing series, from, I don't know, even thinking of like Mills and Boone or like some of the, like Jilly Cooper or whatever, like, again, they are, you know what to expect. You're not tuning in or reading because you suddenly want someone to like be murdered in the middle. Like you, you want that for like light relief to make you happy, as you say. And I mean, one thing I do find is kind of a little bit in the camp of, a bit of defensiveness about editing or kind of being reticent to take feedback. I do think commercial success in the creative communities, it can almost be a bit like a dirty word for those reasons that you just mentioned. So feeling, kind of like pigeonholed, or, that you have to work in certain like guardrails or formulas. But I personally, in my own creative writing and also in development, that is actually one of the hardest things I find. I quite like to have a bit of an open scope within a structure, but within really quite set formulas, like a romance series, like, I've worked with people in TV, I've worked in what we call here, I guess, like recurring drama, so like a soap opera. Um, I personally find that really difficult because it's such a high level of skill to get it right. Bibles are like that thick for, our shows like, don't know if you know, like EastEnders, Coronation Streets, all these long running, like whatever we might think of them. There's a great deal of skill and kind of world knowledge that goes into that.
Right.
And that you need to have that kind of research and insight into that to be able to do it. So it's a high skill, but a lot of writers will, they feel like it's a compromise between art and commercial success. But I think we both would argue that there's a middle ground.
Yes. Yes. I love that statement. And I think that is exactly right. I think writers struggle with is my work, or if I sell out for commercial success, is it selling out, right? And I agree. I think there's a middle ground of being smart and observing, because if something is commercial success, clearly the audience is like it's also comes down to, why are you writing? Is it for you? Is it for an audience? Is it because you want people to enjoy this? Is it because you just want to say you published a book? There's also that. There's also like, what will make you happy? Is it
Mm,
that 100,000 people are going to buy this? Is it that you just did it? You proved to yourself that you could publish
mm-hmm.
something,
Yeah.
So I also think the internal motivation plays a lot into somebody's satisfaction after the fact. Um, so I want to ask you, after this varied background and TV and audio and all this, you wrote an illustrated children's book.
So, I mean, firstly, my inspiration is based on fictional characters, but my inspiration is my daughter and me. I've been a single mum from day one. Like, my daughter knows and sees her father, but we haven't been together, in her lifetime, and that was something that we mutually decided. But over here in the UK, like, it's not lost on me, unfortunately, that there can be quite a, well, incredibly unfair stigma attached to particularly single mothers. When my experience of that is like, it's the old trope, but like it's the most challenging and hard but fulfilling job you can ever do. And, more recently, I like to call it double parenting as opposed to single parenting because it's at least double. I really just wanted to show like an average, joyful, nice, normal day in a single parent household. And it's not entirely overt or obvious necessarily that it's talking about a single mum. It's a day with mum and child. But yeah, I wanted to kind of shift that narrative because there's, rightly so, there are a lot of books out there for younger children, processing divorce, processing bereavement, processing uh, absent parents and challenges. But I mean, recently my daughter has had a few little meltdowns. So at the moment, I can't really speak to the joyful sentiment in this book as much as I love her. But on the whole, we just have a normal life. We have quite a lot of joyful times. We laugh every day. There's parts in the book where, they dance in the kitchen and they snuggle up at night. And to be honest, when my daughter read the book and like recognized herself, recognized her life, we're also a kind of mixed heritage family. So, that's something that I don't feel like our particular family and the mix of heritage within it and the single parent setup is not, I don't know much other kind of literature or illustrated work for young children that I've seen that shows the same setup. So I basically just wanted her to feel proud and represented, I guess we all do, with our kids.
I really love that, Rebecca. I was a young mom when I divorced, and so my son was maybe one-ish, almost two. And as I'm hearing you speak, I'm thinking, yes, every time I reference that time of my life of quote unquote single mommyhood, the thing that bubbles up is like, oh, it was hard and it's hard and it's so hard. And hearing you talk, I kind of felt guilty because I'm like, no, we had joy.
Mm.
We absolutely had laughter and joy among the hard parts. And I wish I would have had some literature like Mommy and
Mm.
Me to also share with my child, and reading story time at night or whenever we're reading stories to depict our scenario to him in a way that's normal.
Yeah, it's that. It's the normalizing. Like I'm not kind of trying to preach for any type of family unit being better than any other or what have you. But there is a lot of, to some extent, there's messaging out there in the US, the UK, around the world, particularly at the moment, that a family is this, or a happy family is this.
How do you put this all together and publish it?
So, as I mentioned earlier, I think it's like important context for this particular book and a bit of an insight for people into development timelines as well. So I was working for a literacy nonprofit, and I originally came in with them to kind of develop the program, to talk about original IP, developing it. But I have to admit, I admitted to them at the time, I'd never developed original illustrated children's books. So we worked with a few different tools. Like, it's quite a great interconnected world now. So there's a few tools online where you can find freelancers, be they illustrators, editors, writers. So we mainly worked with those, or with kind of contacts, recommendations that we had. So we came up with the program. We worked with lots of different independent writers, but I like to write. So particularly because they're a non-profit, some of it was cost saving exercises as well. So I decided to like write a couple of pieces and just, ask my client if they could be interested in these rhyming books, whether they would fit into the program. I was working with them, they could have them, for free or for little cost. And really long story short, Mummy and Me was the first piece that I wrote in a slightly different, it's been edited since then word wise, but quite similar to what it is now. And then after some discussion, that evolved into being a book that I wrote and worked with this illustrator in the first instance, called We Are Family. And it basically was a rhyming piece about a picnic in a American neighborhood, which is kind of unspecified. And so this piece was put to the side about 2.5 years ago. And then I can't even remember, but I think one day I couldn't kind of get it out of my mind. And I was just like, right, I am in a position where I can invest a little bit up front in the illustration. So I got back in touch with that illustrator, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And then once I'd invested, I was like, now I have to earn my money back on this. So that's quite, to be fair, that's quite a great driver. Like, at least to cover my costs on it, which thankfully we're kind of, getting back towards that.
And something you said earlier too about, working for a corporate or, for over 20 years and now going out on your own, has that changed the way you take creative risks or how you make decisions when you work for yourself and you get hired to consult, but you're the, you're the boss. So
Well, I enjoy it. And I feel kind of quite joyful about it. I love the flexibility. So initially it was a kind of needs must. Had to be flexible around my daughter. She's only going to school in September. And even when she goes to school, those days are quite short and whatever. So I had the passion for going freelance. But yeah, in terms of creative risks, it suits me quite a lot because at the moment, as I'm growing my business, like my various work and projects and kind of titles at the moment, I'm working in publishing recruitment as like head of partnerships for a publishing recruiter here in the UK that works internationally, coming out of just some conversations we were having about, liking talking to each other and sharing skill sets and that type of thing. work with a brand marketing agency that, they do everything from kind of speaking coaching to like brand marketing workshops to mentoring. And so I'm kind of partnering with them. I also work on structurally editing. I have a client at the moment who's writing a really interesting, like dystopian, environmental disaster, folk horror anthology novel, which sounds convoluted, but is very well written and is very, very, very interesting. And like I actually really enjoy, as I'm sure you do as well, getting those next drafts like
Right.
from those writers is one of the most exciting parts of my job.
I want to know, Rebecca, very important. What do you want to be true 12 months from now? So we're recording this April 2025. So what do you want to be true April 2026? By April 2026.
So what do I want to achieve?
Yeah. Or what scenario do you want to be a reality?
I would like to grow Rebecca Fenton Media to be, yeah, I love that we are like each other's cheerleaders. This is how it should be. And it has always been. I would really love to kind of knuckle down and plan it and grow it to be more of a kind of full services agency. I would like to get to the place that I can employ talented people that maybe some of them I don't already know, but I know talented people from our previous workplace that we shared, that I would absolutely love to work with and would know that I could trust, within creative development, within like representation is something I've thought about with kind of up and coming writers, creatives, really feel very passionate about finding a route for talented voices that don't necessarily shout the loudest to get to the stage. So yeah, I think, I need to compel myself a little bit more to not rest on my laurels and to do a business plan would help. At the moment, it's that creative agency that like I'm genuinely really enjoying, the variety and kind of saying yes to everything and having that creative license that we talked about. I find that really exciting. But yes, so that would be my ambition. I have much wider ambitions for like my daughter, the world, other things. But
of course, yes.
I would like to grow my business, and I would like for you to continue to grow yours in such the fascinating and awesome way that you are.
I love it. I'm really excited for you. I'm going to link various things in the show notes for people, including your book, your website, but I just want to say it here out loud. It's RebeccaFentonMedia.com where folks can find you. And maybe a year from now, I'm going to book you so we can have this follow-up conversation and just see where we both are. 12 months, a lot can happen in 12 months.
No, hold me accountable. I need that.
I'll be your coach. I'll be your accountability coach. I am so glad that you made time for me, especially again, later at night in your part of the world. So thank you so much, Rebecca, and I will talk to you soon.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me this week. For more information on today's episode, please check out the show notes or go to writeronblockedpodcast.com. Before we wrap up, if today's episode sparked ideas for your author career, don't let them sit in your head. Take action. If you are ready for high-impact support, I offer one-on-one strategy sessions to help authors like you navigate your author business with precision. Head to reignitewithnicole.com to book a session or apply for any of my author programs. And if you found this episode valuable, please share it with a fellow writer and leave a review. Thanks for listening to Writer Unblocked, and I will see you next time.